Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the week and weeks ahead in New York versus Trump. All right, so last week of evidence ended, I thought, quite effectively, but on the precipice of the Stormy Daniels transaction. And that's the one that is really at issue. That's what gives rise to all the misidentified and fraudulent pieces of paper. However, what the prosecution was able to accomplish in the first week was really link it very well, build a bridge that it's just got to be part of from a meeting in Trump Tower when Trump is deciding to run for president with Trump and Pecker and Michael Cohen and Hope Hicks for that matter, though she doesn't speak, and all the way up to Stormy Daniels. And that includes everything with McDougal, as well as the Access Hollywood tape, which has just come out, and they are in total crisis. And the importance of the whole thing thematically is it's quite clear that all of this is about salvaging. It's kind of ironic now to remember, but he was a distinct underdog even on election day to Hillary Clinton, but salvaging and keeping alive Trump's electoral prospects. That's what matters. You've seen some coverage, the New York Times, for example, that says the defense line is to try to say that catch and kill, as it's called, where Pecker would, he's the prime practitioner in the industry, would, buy a story and bury it, happens all the time. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's kind of bizarre. It's contrary to a profit motive, for one. The McDougal story, part of the testimony would have been worth much, much more. But it happens, and it's a part of his business model. We know he did it for Schwarzenegger some 20 times, not to the individual expense of the McDougal payments. But that, you can imagine the National Enquirer having a little catch and kill division on the fourth floor or whatever. The main point is not whether it's something that he does else other times. It's why he's doing it and what it's for. So I don't, to the extent the Times is accurate in saying that's where they're getting at, and it's a little tricky because all we really know is from the cross-examination. I don't think that would be an effective point. And in fact, let me talk briefly a little bit more, I didn't last week, about the cross-examination. So the cross-examination of Pecker, who was on for 3 days and then was cross-examined for the better part of half a day, was technically sound and went through a series of points, but otherwise I thought ineffective. It just didn't raise very good points. It took a little too long. And those it did, some of them were very swiftly rebutted in the redirect in ways that kind of pulled out the carpet from under the Trump lawyer, who, for instance, had tried to make a big deal of this document doesn't say thus and so does it. No, but Pecker says, well, that's the whole point. We were camouflaging it. Or this doesn't express that you were still fond of Donald Trump. No, but I was, and here's the other document that does. In other words, even the few effective points I thought were pretty quickly undermined on redirect, and even in a way that lost some credibility of the defense with the jury. So, not that it's a rout, but I would say at the end of the first week, the basic storyline is solid. And and Trump is in a hole, and he's in a hole in part of his own making, because they have to try to argue that, and he wants them to, he never did any of these things. He never slept with Karen McDougal, and we have, his saying to David Pecker, how's our girl doing? Or with Stormy Daniels, and we have his, having her cell phone under just Stormy. He's taking on all the Trump lies in a way that will really put it like he's lying or everybody's lying. And, I think the jury will see that. Okay, but now we are at the Stormy episode, and it's a little tricky because in order to hide it, Michael Cohen recall, uses his own money, takes out a home equity. I'm sorry, let me say one more point is we also now understand something we didn't before, which is why Pecker is no longer involved. It turned out that he learned that the Karen McDougal thing could have campaign finance violations. And so he backed away and told Cohen he was backing away. And Cohen said the boss, they always call him the boss. That's, one of the many like little good points that the prosecution is getting in. He's always the boss. Another good point that we'll hear in closing argument, Pecker says Michael Cohen couldn't buy lunch without Trump's approval. So we know he wouldn't be doing these things on his own. But anyway, so we know now why Pecker's out of the mix. He said, "I'm not paying for it anymore. I'm not a bank," and he was worried about the campaign finance expenditures or possible violation. Even though there's no rift with Trump, I thought it was very striking how kind of unabashed and straightforward he was about conduct that is, at a minimum, sleazy. But anyway, we're now Cohen going to his own banker, and he's the one who's on the stand. And that's when he's going to get this loan out. And so that's where we'll start tomorrow. And it's, at least subject to some kind of cross-examination that might try to suggest this is Cohen acting on his own or without Trump's knowledge. Who's going to rebut that? Michael Cohen mainly. And in general, the strategy of the DA is not to have Michael Cohen's word out there alone, but always to be corroborated. Now here, there's a little snippet of tape that Cohen was able to get where it's clear Trump says something like, what'll this cost us? $130,000. There's going to be a little bit, and then there's going to be all the paper. But here they're going to try to have a strong cross of the banker and just do whatever they can to make it seem that this is Cohen as a loan operator. In general, since I think, as you know, that Donald Trump won't testify and can't testify, their big shot and what they're aiming for will be the cross-examination of Michael Cohen, who they've taken to calling simply Cohen. The DA totally knows that, and the DA wants to not build his case around Cohen except as necessary. I think that suggests that Cohen will come somewhere in the middle of the case, could be as soon as later in this week, and that the direct will not be that detailed and long, but it doesn't matter because the cross will then still be, at least a couple days, I would say, and they'll really try to dirty him up. But among other things, you've probably seen him on TV now. I think a lot of people could say, yeah, he was, they've also has the prosecution kind of previewed that Cohen can exaggerate, I think was one word they used, can be, pretty dramatic, insistent. So, they're going to be there. What they're planning now is not for Cohen to carry their case, but to set it up so they can go to the jury closing argument and say, you've heard all these things about Michael Cohen, but look, you saw him, you can evaluate, you can see the internal coherence of his story, and in any event, and then go through all the corroboration from David Pecker, from the papers, and importantly, maybe the last witness, if you want to end with something really good, Hope Hicks, who was at certain points, and this was more than we knew, starting with the initial meeting itself, who I think it'll be clear is not looking to bury Trump, who is very sort of credible, and who I think will corroborate some very important parts of Cohen's story. So we're going generally toward the Stormy story. I think we will see Stormy Daniels. And among other things, she'll testify that Trump and she had sex, and maybe there's been some suggestion he was somewhat assaultive. We'll see how that plays too, and they'll try to cross-examine her and make it seem like she's making it all up. But he won't be able, Trump, to give his own version, I don't think, because there will be, really no time that he can do it because he won't be testifying. And therefore, the question is whether the jury will disbelieve Stormy. Okay, so in broad strokes, I would call this week waiting for Cohen. We're moving into Stormy. Cohen's going to carry that a lot, including certain things that he carries alone. And the defense will have a bruising cross-examination of him, but I think they've already sort of laid the tracks for what is a credible story about what happens and why it happens, and even a sort of savage cross-examination. This will be the question, but I don't think will take the jury to a point where it has a reasonable doubt about the overall theory of the case. And what that will leave, and we'll get to this later, is whether there's anything about the consummation of the crime and the different papers involved and Trump's intent about them that give rise to a reasonable doubt. But I think as far as the basic story, yes, Cohen will be a big part of it, but it'll be corroborated almost 360 degrees, not quite, but as far as they can go. And that his testimony, and especially the cross, will be what will really, I think, bring the jury to the edge of its seats. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.